Hi, it's Julie. Welcome to your how to do the Pilates plank video. A little instructional video, really short but really important that you watch it. If you're watching it as part of our 30-day Pilates plank challenge, then welcome, well done on doing something good for your health. If you're watching it as part of a member of the Life Tonic Club and you're exploring your tutorial library, then welcome to you too. It's brilliant to see that you are going to focus on your form for this really important Pilates exercise. So in this, you're going to understand what happens in the plank. We're going to look at some progressions, so to work you through different levels, starting from absolute beginner all the way through to more advanced, so you're always kind of knowing what the next stage is that you're looking to progress to. We're going to look at some modifications, so if you've got kind of any sort of wrist problems, we're going to have a little look at that to make sure you feel comfortable, and overall just the form. So as you understand what's happening, and you can feel really safe and supported and really confident in your plank. And once you've kind of had a little play around with this, understanding some of these principles, then you are on set just to build that strength super quickly. It's one of the best things about Pilates is that when it's done right with that kind of control and that precision and that form, then you can do less repetitions because the form is there. So let's have a little look at the plank, what's involved. We'll start from the top of the body, we'll work our way down. So we'll look at shoulders, we'll look at hips, lower body, legs, even down to the toes. And of course, we'll have a little look at what happens in the spine, and then we'll progress from there. So I'm going to demo this and you're going to watch, and feel free to join in if you want to feel in your own body what's happening. So we're going to start by coming into a plank position, and I'll talk you through what happens in the upper body. So bringing your hands to the mat. If you come into a 4-point kneeling position, so your knees, if you're not familiar, are under your hips and your wrists are underneath your shoulders here. So this is one of the ways that you can come into a plank in Pilates. But let's just have a little look at alignment through the upper body. So really what we're looking for is a really nice alignment through the wrist. Same way we would in the lower body, where we look for the ankle and the hip. It's the same: the shoulder, the elbow, and the wrist. So a couple of things to watch out for. When it comes to the wrist, good placement of the wrist for a plank, you're thinking of your fingers facing forwards. So sometimes people will face in, sometimes they'll face out. It could just be down to wrist discomfort, or maybe just a little bit of misalignment somewhere in the upper body. But all you need to do is think about bringing your fingers so as they face forward, and also the creases. Have a little look at the creases in your wrist as well. So they need to be kind of facing forward as well. That's the first thing. Then from there you can kind of work your way up. So you're pressing down into those hands. The fingers are spread nice and wide, so you feel really supported through the hands. If you work your way up into the out for being hyper extended in the elbow. So we see this quite a lot where the creases face forward. That would be me hyper extending in my elbow joint. So I've kind of locked out. I've gone on to bone to bone. Arm bones are just sitting. I'm working there, and you want to definitely avoid that because you will point. So to avoid this hyperextension at the elbows, you're going to rotate the arms from the shoulder socket, rotate it so as the creases come to face one another. Often if you come to class, bring the creases of the elbows so they smile in towards one another. So that's a nice way to think of it. And then soften your elbows a little bit so as you feel the muscles activate, so you're not pressing the bone onto the bone. There should be a little softness through those elbows, and that brings you into a nice kind of strong position. You're starting to feel now maybe a little bit more work happening in the upper body, not just through into it a little bit now as well, because remember, you've got to get the upper body working to help support all the body. That's really important to be aware of. So after that, like I say, we've got this nice alignment, so this nice long line, and you want to now try and make the connection to the shoulder. If you think of the weight as passing straight down through the center the plank, we can be kind of back. Think of bringing the weight more down through the center of the palm of the hand onto the mat. And then if you think of almost spiraling the shoulder blades to turn in, so you're trying to get in the shoulder here to connect into your. So the way to kind of do that is to press, like I say, through the center of that hand, and then almost think of spiraling the arm as it connects to the floor. So that feels, or should kind of feel like you're turning your shoulder blades into get that connection. You should feel a connection to the you're trying to the serratus then you can well. So think of that spiraling of the hand, of the arm bone, pressing center through the hands, fingers forward, creasing forward, nice and lifted in that chest, and you're thinking of that spiraling through the arm bone there. So that's what's happening in the upper body. Something to have a little think about. Let's have a little look at what's happening sort of lower, moving into the. So for a plank, so I'm going to stay on my mat. For the plank, you a hip extension. So you're going to, if you sit, you know, if you do a lot of sitting, this is a great. I just show you sometimes where it can go wrong. What I mean, flexed a little, that nice long line from the shoulder all the way down to your ankle. That's where you're trying to find here, and you're pulling your heart between the arms. So if you think about that, so the hips are down, so they're open, but what they're not. So think about the shoulder all the way down to the ankle. So we're not flexing our hips, we've not dropped in our hips, we've not gone into extension in our lumbar spine. We are nice and long, straight line all the way down. From there, you can think about the connection or what other support you feel that you might need if you're doing that version of the plank. So one of the things we often talk about is connecting your inner thighs. So if you then, so plank can be done here, connected, but you can also bring the inner thighs connected. And I would recommend this if you're kind of new, because you get a little bit of extra support from your adductor muscles, which are going to link into your pelvic floor, and of course that blends into your core system as well. So it's definitely a lot more connected and a lot more supported. So I would give that a try as well. The knees are open, so you're in, or should be in, full knee extension, and same with the toes. So you're in toe extension. Bizarre to think about the toes, but you are. And there's a dorsiflexion, so your ankles are dorsiflexed as well. And some people can find that a little bit uncomfortable through the toes because, again, we're kind of not used to position. So I'll show you some things you can do to work around that, which is fun. So it just kind of involves warming up the toes, getting a bit of mobility into them. So that's what's happening through the lower body. Particularly important to pay attention to those hips. So getting that nice line from the shoulder down to the ankle. So it's a nice diagonal line. So that's the hips. Knees nice and open, toes, we'll get to those in a little second, but before we get there I want to talk about the spine. So the last part of the puzzle in the plank is to have a look at the spine. So in Pilates, as you know, we're always trying to work or move into and out of this neutral position of the spine, building this awareness of the natural curves, which is the most supported position really for your spine, and we hold that in the plank as best we can. So to find that connection, it's important to think about our rib to hip connection, because that's really where that magic happens. So often, again, I'll explain about having a set of braces. If you can imagine, the braces are attached to your last rib, and then they fall down to attached to the top of your hip bones. So it's that sense of the ribs being drawn down and connected to the pelvis, and you want to find that position in your plank. That's why in Pilates we do 4-point kneeling and then we come into our plank, because 4-point kneeling gives us that chance to set ourselves up in that nice neutral position before we slide the legs back. So again, always move with that control, break it down, and then you can find your form, and that's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck with every Pilates exercise. So again, come into your 4-point kneeling, find all your connections that we've just spoken about through the arms, and then think about connecting those ribs, and that will help you find that long line. So if you've not got that long line in your center, so take your time with that, press back into the heel, weight is, and then connect the ribs. So again, if you're not connecting, you're going to probably be flexed or extended in your low back or in your spine. But if you connect down, sense the ribs connect into those pelvis, think of really, really strong in the upper body, weight down through that center point of the hand, picking up muscles around the scapula, serratus, holding here and down. Good. All right. So that's all the different things that are happening in your body when you do the plank, things to look out for, finding your form. A couple of things where we can run into trouble, excluding what we've just spoken through in respect of neutral, would be your wrists. So it is a weight bearing exercise, full body, if you're doing that version of the plank. And where we can see issues crop up with the wrists is where we're not used to having them in wrist extension. So this may seem overly technical, but I promise you, if you listen and understand this, you'll understand why, and it will really change your practice for you if you are somebody that experiences wrist discomfort in something like this. So in everyday life, our wrists tend to be in flexion. So we're like this. So we're on our phones, we're on our keyboards, we're driving, so the wrists are flexed. We are holding tea, water, whatever, our wrists are flexed, which means when we come into a position that's not flexion of the wrists, often it can feel quite uncomfortable because it's just not a move that we're used to, and we might have lost a certain range of movement at that joint. So there's a couple of things you can do to help that so that it doesn't feel as uncomfortable, if that sounds like you. And it involves stretching the wrists and stretching through the forearm. And I'll show you a little bit of mobility work as well. Again, Life Tonic Club members, you've got access to your wrist modification videos, so you can watch that separately if you're watching this through the Life Tonic Club as well, if you're a member. So let's have a little look at a couple of things you can do to stretch off the wrists. So again, back into this nice 4-point kneeling position. You can turn your hands the other way. So if you turn the fingers to face your knees, palms are down, spread those fingers nice and evenly, and then from this 4-point kneeling position, from your 4-point kneeling position, you're just going to keep your neutral spine, and then you're just going to start to move back. So it's like you're sending your bum back towards your heels, a little bit of centering, and you're only really bringing it to where you feel that the wrists are going to, the palms are going to pull from that, and you will feel a huge in your forearm. Quite nice. This is a great one to do if you do a lot of typing, spend a lot of time on devices. So again, it's up to you how far you want to sink that bum back. Have some fun with it. You can come back over and then just sink back again. Up to you if you want to do it that way. Get that nice stretch. And then the other thing you can do is take the palms to face up and stretch in the opposite direction. So again, this can feel a little bit uncomfortable if you're not used to it. You're going to try and, so again, you turn the palms up, arm bones, and this time the palms are facing, and watch for that sinking in the shoulders. Lift out of the shoulders, pressing down. Again, you're going to stretch the front of the arms here around the wrists. And then when you've had enough of that, you can gently just peel the hands back. So again, wrist mobility really important in everyday life, not just for planking. You can clasp your hands together and just give your wrists some rolls as well. And then once you feel more comfortable with the wrist, again, it'll give you that added support. So again, in the plank, remember, we're not sinking. We are lifted in our chest. Another reason why we think about spiraling that arm and trying to connect to the shoulder blades on the back. The serratus is the muscle that's also responsible for that sense of width on your back. So that widening of the shoulder blades on your back. So it's important to try and pick that muscle up when you work in Pilates and in the plank. So that's a couple of things you can do to get your wrist moving. The other thing you can do, some simple modifications, is to roll your mat back. So sometimes wrist extension just is too much for people, and that's absolutely fine. But if you roll your mat back and you bring your wrists onto the mat and bring your fingers onto the floor, then you comfortable. So that's another option. You can also use yoga blocks to do that. So you can pop some blocks down, and again, the same thing. You're going to keep your wrists, your fingers on the mat, and sort of wrists over the edge of the blocks. That can be useful as well. If you're really struggling, a great one is to keep your wrist neutral. So maybe you are somebody that's kind of you're just building that strength in your upper body, you really feel it in your wrists, then you can actually put your wrists into a neutral position, which would mean just making little fists and then bringing your knuckles to the mat, and then it's a nice straight line through the wrist here. So that is another comfortable way that you can plank actually. And that can feel really quite comfortable for some people as well. So that's another thing to consider, another option that you've got there. The other thing you can do is come onto your forearm and do a forearm plank. Now, I actually find forearm planks a lot more intense, but if you wanted to give that a try, then I'll show you. You can do this again with the knees down. You can bring the pinky edge of the hand to the mat and then almost come into a little prayer position. And then think of pressing down the sides of the arms into the mat, and again trying to pick up that muscle on the back. So think of the arms reaching away from one another. Imagine there's a sheet of paper on the mat or something, or a sheet, and you're trying to tear it down the middle. So think of that sense there, and then you can come into your plank. If you were doing a forearm plank, it would kind of look like this. Try and get those hips down. Again, I find this much more challenging than a normal plank, but that's an option there. All right, so that is the wrists. Let's have a little look at the other joints that can be a bit troublesome, which are right at the bottom, and it's the toes. So again, we're in toe extension, in the plank, which can feel uncomfortable. So foot mobility is really important. So you can do a couple of things there. You can come into a little pedal of the legs. So you will know this from plank. You can pike yourself up, and then you can just take the heels to the floor. So a little pedal through the legs in pike can sometimes help mobilize your toes a little bit. The other thing you can do, and again, if you work with me, you will know I'm a big fan of this. If you've got a spiky ball or a soft ball at home, you can massage the foot. So get moving the toes. And that is how you plank the Pilates way. If you're doing 30-day challenge, have a brilliant time, enjoy it. Find those connections. I promise it makes the world of difference to how you build that strength in your body. Remember to use the hashtag 30-day plank challenge and tag at the Life Tonic Club on Instagram so I can see you and cheer you on from wherever you are in the world doing our challenge. And I will see you back on your mat really soon. Thank you so much. Be kind.